Can't hear you guys very clearly at all.
I can't hear anything.
You just have to speak into one of these two devices, right?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Felt like a Verizon commercial. Okay. So we're calling this meeting to order. We're going to start with introductions, starting with Commissioner Webb.
Okay, this is Pam Webb. I regret I did not know this was an in-person meeting. I assumed it was virtual, so I apologize for not being there. If there's a 5 or a 10-minute break anywhere, I will buzz down, but I regret that I'm not there.
Well, we appreciate you online.
Yeah, I'm Commissioner Anthony Wakua, District 2, Clatsop County. Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson, Leanne Thompson, District 5, the southern half of Clatsop County.
I'm Commissioner Bangs, District 4, Clatsop County, and our chair, Commissioner Quayla, is running about 5 minutes late, but he will be here. Starting around the table, no?
Hi, Danelle Davis, local, animal hospital budget committee.
Excellent. David Ozer.
David Ozer, live in Astoria and on the budget committee.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us. And I see Clara Schroof online.
Yep. Clara Srofe, District 5 Citizen Committee member. I do apologize. I was having some tech issues. So at some point, hopefully I will switch to a computer and I'll be able to see you guys a little better.
Excellent. City, Tita Montero.
Tita Montero, I thought this was a hybrid meeting. I'm sorry if it was supposed to be an in-person. I did not understand that.
Oh, no, it's definitely a hybrid meeting. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Okay.
And Lindsay Davis.
Lindsay Davis, Citizen Budget Committee member, and I took full advantage of this being a hybrid meeting. My son has a baseball game that's going to be starting, so I'll be able to participate here and then jump out and join his game. Thank you.
Excellent. And did I get all of our Citizen Committee members who are present? Perfect. So we shall be moving on to the Westport Sewer Budget Committee. And I am passing the baton to our chair.
Why?
You know,
Yeah, you're doing such a good job.
no, man. I was really hoping. Okay, here we go. Is there any public comment? Okay, hearing none. Is there a staff report?
So were there was a question on the Westport Sewer Service District budget when we were reviewing it. It's going online. You can hear me. I'll speak up and yell. There was an errant line item balance that was tucked under the grouping of special payments. We have now kind of rectified that, and that expense was under the indirect cost allocations. That has now been adjusted and moved up to materials and services. As a reminder, this was just a line item issue in the grouping. All the balances did not change. We just wanted to present that to the committee and turn it back over to see if there's any further discussion and or conclusion.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing and hearing none, can we have a motion?
And just a reminder, the motion needs to come from the Board of Commissioners because this is just a Westport district, and so any Board of Commissioners can make a motion.
I would salute.
Thompson will second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Westport Sewer District budgets. All those in favor signify with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Excellent. Motion passes. And then I will pass the baton to Chair Ozer.
Thank you very much. So this is a continuation of the countywide budget meeting, which began last week, May 7th. Does any member have a conflict of interest to report that was not previously reported? Seeing none, do we have any public comment? Also seeing none, we will turn the meeting over to staff. There were questions last week about federal funds, and staff has presented us with some information which they will now review.
Thank you, Chair Oger. Like Chair Oger was mentioning, there were a few questions about federal funding. How much does the county receive? What does that look like in the context of total resources? The response was given that for federal funding, we only truly receive less than 1% of the total county resources. But we also wanted to show within the budget document each and every area that could potentially be impacted. And I guess I just want to underscore that with saying we don't know. We don't know if it's actually going to materialize. But again, we're prepared and ready to pivot if this was taken fruition. So we wanted to just show that to the board and the committee and see if there's any additional questions regarding federal funding.
Commissioner Banks.
I just want to make note, I'm sad to see that most of it falls under pediatrics. So hopefully the potential loss doesn't occur, because that's a lot that falls under pediatrics.
Commissioner Thompson.
Second Commissioner Banks' comment. The other thing that I'm noticing when we're looking at prison costs,
Speak up, please.
I can't speak louder than that.
Sorry.
You're gonna have to get me another microphone. Or maybe
Maybe you can, yeah, push it over, Jim. Thank you.
sorry, but in a meeting. I've been in meetings all day long today, and after a certain point, it just gets a little weaker. I noticed in the correction budget that the comment was made that we're seeing less and less physically well adults in custody. The correlation between the cuts in these programs and the downstream impacts on the physical, emotional, and social well-being of our people is so clear and compelling. And this is the federal money. What we heard today was that the state revenue forecast is also, what do I want to call it, shaky, weak. So the effort that's been made to budget precisely, the thoughtful consideration by all the members of the budget committee to support our community's decision-making process about how we manage our resources has never been more important. And I'm grateful to everybody who's here, staff, electeds, community members who's part of it.
Commissioner Banks.
And just a point of clarification for my sake, we have had no news that any of this is going to be cut, correct? So this is just making sure this is a clarity situation, and we haven't even heard.
Just to put it on the radar screen about what is currently on the table that we don't have control over, obviously, and there's just so much uncertainty right now. So we just wanted to let you know what that looks like.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
She's on.
Okay. Clara, thank you. Clara.
Yeah, would it be all, would you be able to send out this page you have on the screen right now to our emails so that we can add it to our binders? I know it's all hypothetical, but it would just be nice to keep everything together.
Yeah, we can certainly send it out again. It's included in the PowerPoint that was sent. It was all separate, sent as a separate document, but we can follow it, send it again.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on federal funding? Okay. So we will move on. I'm sorry, Commissioner Webb.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I hope it's not just my computer, but I'm having a lot of trouble hearing the people who are physically at the meeting. I missed entirely this last discussion about the federal funds. I'm sorry, we're just, can we do anything about the? this?
We will continue to try and speak loudly into the microphone.
Thank you. That might help.
A good reminder for us all. At our last meeting, we were part of the way through the public safety and justice, and there were a number of questions that were sent in to the staff. Some of them were answered in writing, but I'm sure that there will be some additional discussion before we can move on. So I'm going to move this to the staff.
Thank you, Chair Ogier. So we did get through the majority of the public safety and justice budget. We answered a number of questions that were already submitted in last week's meeting. Subsequent to that meeting, there were additional questions that were submitted. So what we wanted to do is come back to those new questions, and I'll kind of speak to those before we move forward and see if there's any other questions about these. So one of the first questions was on page 169, is the special detective new staff, as a contractor, and what changed for that increase? So this is related to moving a half-time position from Marine Patrol and adding to special detective line where there's a significant need for investigative support for patrol deputies. This doesn't increase total public safety FTE, it just half an FTE from Marine Patrol to the Enforcement Division and RLDD. On page 173, there was a question of general equipment increase. The general equipment increase is increasing to replace end-of-life body cameras. The cost would have been substantially more if all cameras were replaced. Instead, there was an option where we could purchase 40% fewer cameras and still maintain cover. There's also a need to purchase a new food warmer for the kitchen. If anybody has any additional questions.
Rita is raising.
Oh, there it is.
I need to interrupt you. When you speak fast, we cannot understand you, and there is an echo coming through that mars the quality of the transmission. So I guess what I'm going to ask, if maybe you could speak a little slower, maybe have the mic closer to you. I know that that's a cavernous room and there's an echo that's coming through and making it difficult for us to hear you, to hear.
Absolutely. We will get these microphones adjusted and I will slow down.
Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. On page 177 is the JMOUD a new expense and will it be reoccurring? Approximately $100,000 of the JMOUD grant funds received in 24-25 will roll over into 25-26 fiscal year. One-time grant funding. M114 funding for jail-based MAT programs should be supported by the state, at least in the near term. Andrew? Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I was just going to make note that anytime we have grant funding as a line item, could we identify it as a grant so that next year when I have questions again, I'm not asking the same question of where did it go?
Sure.
Because if it's a grant, then I know it came, it went, we passed it through. And that it is just holding space in the budget, that it's not something.
Taking a guess at what?
Exactly.
Sure.
Because I sense I'll have the same question next year.
That's fair. So when it comes to those naming conventions that we arrive at, we'll take that. The next question is also on page 177. I'm sorry. Just okay. Keep slow down. Medical supplies increase. Is that because of more injury or increased cost to the stores? There's an increase of $4,000 in medical supplies due to inflation affecting pricing of consumable supplies. There is also a portion of the increase attributed to care for the Benton County bed leases, which will be billed back to Benton County for major expenses. Next question was on page 181 for internet service and television cable. The question was, are those transferred expenses from somewhere else or new reoccurring costs to this department? While these are not new expenses, these are new expense lines that were created to provide more detail regarding specific utility expenses. And you can also notice the offsetting decreases in telephone and the EM utility lines. Page 182, question of, is the mileage increase due to the education increase? So these expenses are not related to one another. The reimbursed mileage line item has increased to be more reflective of the actual expense. The current year is projected to be $2,000, which is what is being budgeted for 25-26. Increase in education, the increase in education is related to staff certification.
Could I ask a question, please? Thank you. I assume that this mileage relates to public outreach within Clatsop County and beyond. Is that accurate or not?
I think that'd be fair to say.
Thank you.
And I had a question also on this budget. The, we are no longer having our own cremation unit. How are we, where's the expense of having these pets cremated?
Paul, do you want to respond to where you're taking them?
The local vet offices provide this service, so people will be directed to that. And one of the challenges was we provide a very, very basic level of support in that, and people care about their pets, and we were unable to provide the higher level support that they expect and require.
Yeah, we have one of the,
Yes.
and Columbia Vet has the other one. Yeah, there's two more. Yeah. There's also, I can go up, but I don't think to.
To answer your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, moving into page 185, increases in temp help and sheltered food. Is that due to volunteer shortage? So due to inconsistent availability of kennel staff through the temp agency, the decision was made to bring that function back into the county. There's an offsetting decrease in contractual services temp help line within materials and services. And the shelter food increases is more reflective of the current expenses in the current year of approximately $40,000. On page 188 and 189, the question on line spay, neuter, microchip, the 100% increase in funding, but a 233% increase in spending proposal. So the reason being is in 25-26, the funding of $30,000 for spay, neuter, microchip has an offsetting expense of $30,000. So those offset and come to net zero. However, in 24-25, the adopted funding was $15,000 and the offsetting expense was less than the funding of $9,000. So to get those right size for the current year, the percentage change is related to having those funding equal the expenditure. On page 205 is the deflection program coordinator grant funded. Yes, it is. This is a state grant funded position. On page 206 for family treatment court, is this transferred from somewhere else or is it new? It's based on change funding and practice on multiple grants to include Justice Reinvestment Program, Behavioral Health Deflection Program, and Family Court Grant. The grants are funding more staff such as deputies in the Enforcement Division and one parole and probation deputy. And the last question we had was on page 208. If the courthouse security was new. So while we're undergoing the single point entry project, currently, this is not a new org unit. This fund is administered by a local committee pursuant to Oregon law and was established to direct the development and implementation of a plan for court security. The Clatsop committee is chaired by Judge Peterson, and the sheriff deputy provides security for the courthouse is paid for with 50% of the funds provided by the courthouse security fund and 50% paid from the general fund in the enforcement division.
Before we move on to questions, if I can just make a suggestion to those online, if you do have, headphones, it's my understanding that it helps as far as hearing a little bit better, as well as taking away some of the background and echo noise. And so if you're able to utilize, headphones online, I would make that recommendation to help you out.
Commissioner Banks.
Well, first the statement and then the question. So the statement is, thank you for punctuating all of my questions before putting them on the big screen because I was, fast typing. But, so the last question here, it wasn't, and I know it wasn't well, asked. It was more along the lines of the transfer from general fund. Was that new?
So I'll speak to that. Yes. So one of the challenges that we've been having with the state is what it truly costs to provide court security. And we have been supplementing court security, but there have been a lot of questions about like, what are your true costs? And we haven't been showing our true costs. And so we will be hiring a security firm to be able to oversee the single point of entrance. And so that's going to be a significant increase to our budget. And so that general fund transfer is because we are continuing to supplement it with general fund dollars, but we're showing it in the court security fund. So it's just going to be easier to track.
Thank you. And thank you for all of that.
Are there any more comments, questions, concerns about public safety and justice before we move on from anyone? Okay, I'm seeing none. So we will go on to the public health. And I just want to say, I think I would ask staff to begin their comments here. We no longer have the position of public health director. And so if you can comment on how things will be organized and what the financial impact of that will be.
I'm more than happy to do that. Sorry, Carol, there's just one section.
And this is, oh, that's right. We have to pay the sheriff and the DA. I thought they were pro bono.
And that's the board of commissioners who make that decision. Just for your clarification, the way that it is budgeted is, it is common practice that we do not, we pay the sheriff and the DA at least 10% of what their chief deputies make. And so there is 10% reflected in the sheriff, budget for his position. And then the DA stipend does show a decrease. However, it's not a decrease in his salary. It's because of the state increase of their COLAs. And so the offsetting 10% is a slight decrease in the stipend for the 24-25. So therefore, it also reflects in 25-26. But it is also the 10% greater than the DA's chief deputy.
I move to approve the sheriff's salary and the DA stipend.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good. Thank you. Okay. Now we will go to public health. Thank you.
So for the central area of public health, there's a total appropriation of the proposed budget of $9.5 million. And starting at the top of personnel services, that there is a decrease of 5.5%. This is due to a 1.65 decrease in FTE. And those positions include the public health director and the nursing supervisor. To expand a little bit about these positions and this functional area, I'm going to defer to Monica, maybe expand a little bit on that.
Sure. So we talked a little bit about it, and I know Dawn mentioned it in the budget message as well. And so in an effort to find some of those cost savings as well as efficiency of delivering services, we are going to be creating a health and human services function. And so that's going to include the juvenile department, public health, social services, and behavioral health. And so the public health director position will become the health and human services director. And we currently have Kelly Broughton, who is serving as the interim public health director, as well as the juvenile director. And so it will be looking at converting that position into the health and human services director position. So there's still that director oversight. The nursing supervisor position is a position that left last fiscal year, and we are managing without that position. We have a nursing staff person who fills in for that supervisory role, and we've worked out what the compensation looks like for that. And so we are able to reduce those FTE, but not reduce services.
Questions, Commissioner Banks?
On page 227, I see a bunch of, I assume, new funding sources, which then I also assume are grants.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So when those grants expire, will there be new grants to replace them, or will that funding come from the general fund?
So if I can just explain a little bit of that as well, and I think that we're going into some of what Andy is planning to do, but but one of the things that we are also doing is the public health department has a large number of organizational units. And so what this program, it used to be tobacco prevention, and now it is going to be health promotion and primary prevention. And so the alcohol and drug prevention org unit, which is, I think, 7156, thank you. 7156 is now being combined with this one. And so a lot of those grants, that state funding is not new, it's just new in this org unit. And so you'll see when we get to the behavioral health section, where that you'll see them not budgeted there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe just to add to that, there's going to be a bit of a theme here, because we do have some areas that are either being absorbed, or being transferred, or they're being isolated and separated out for tax purposes. You see that in the different.
You want to continue?
On that note, on page 239, is that an example of that, where the allocation from the general fund is a proposed change of 100%? Is that just another, we are being more specific where the money is coming and going?
More or less. I mean, so most of their grant funding is one-time funding. So depending on the funding source and how much is either left in that funding source, it might require general fund support to be deployed in that area. It's not necessarily consistent year to year. It just depends on the program.
And specific to that one was previously, we were utilizing ARPA funds.
Okay.
And the ARPA is now zero, and the general fund is essentially what the ARPA.
Coming back to do what it used to do before ARPA. Okay, excellent, thank you.
Okay. So moving down to the materials and services, again, some of these we're going to be a little repetitive, but there's some decreases here. Most of it has to do with one-time grant program funding. As Monica kind of mentioned, there's a couple of org units that are being moved around. So emergency preparedness is being moved under emergency management, which further decreases the materials and services line. The on-site septic is being moved under the community development department in the effort to align the service delivery and increase efficiency. The debt service is increased by $40,000 as payment towards the general fund internal loan for the household hazardous waste facility. The transfers out is increased by $1.7 million and is a result of transferring the opioid settlement funds to its own fund and org unit for tracking and reporting purposes. The byproduct of that, you can see in the contingency, the decrease of about $1.2 million, again, as also related to the opioid settlement funds being moved. And my additional note here is what we've already kind of touched on with the reorganization of this functional area. We only received one additional question for this functional area on pages 234, 235. Question being, it looks like we are cutting back on maternal and child health, and does this reflect less need? So what this actually is reflecting is a more accurate budget in regard to the number of clients that staff are actually able to see, and in turn bill Medicaid for those services. So that's really what drives that.
Commissioner Thompson.
I'm trying to remember how long it's prepaid the debt for the hazardous household hazardous waste facility.
So we extended it 5 years this past year, so we'll have 4 years left.
4 years.
4 years.
Thank you.
I do have a question on that very topic, hazardous household waste. It seems like, we have this statement, but it's used very, very infrequently. What's the issue there?
So part of it is staffing, and then also just we contract with a company to come in and take those materials away. We are having conversations with Recology in regard to if they were to manage that and be able to have it open on a weekly basis, so that way the people can come any day of the week when they're coming to the dump and also be able to utilize that. So we've been having those conversations with Recology to see how we can utilize the facility more frequently. But until we confirm things there, it's still on a quarterly basis.
Other questions? I have one other question regarding the food banks. We've seen, at least here in our part of the northern part of Clatsop County, that the food banks have had cuts in what they're receiving. How is the county responding to that? Is that shown in the budget anywhere that there's additional funding for food banks, or are we waiting to see the impact of the other federal funding?
At this point in time, the county does not fund the food bank.
Let me ask the question a little bit differently. That would the county, if the food banks were really in a bind, would the county consider some funding for the food banks?
So the county would have to look at the resources and services that we provide to be able to supplement another program.
Yep.
So I think, I'll just expand on that a bit. I think what would happen, because of the uncertainty right now, and certainly the food banks are one of the agencies that are feeling it, is that once we can get a sense of the entirety of the challenge, then we can go back to the board and weigh what is our discretionary revenues, because those are discretionary revenues that get allocated. Where are we in our discretionary revenues? What are the holes that the board may or may not wish to fill with those discretionary revenues, and weigh the impacts that those investments will have. I mean, part of what I think we're going to figure out is whether or not it's going to be a longer term commitment to make some of this work. Because there has been kind of a equilibrium between a lot of our services with the funding sources that we have had. When you lose a part of the funding source, the equilibrium goes haywire. And that's the way that the criminal justice system works too. You have to have so many district attorneys, so many judges, so many police officers, sheriff's deputies, and it has to be all calibrated. And that's the way social service works too. And obviously it doesn't work perfectly because the funding sources are coming from all different places with all different kinds of requirements. So what I would say is, as we get a better sense of what that need is, then we'll certainly have those conversations with the board and see what our capabilities are. I mean, part of the reality for us right now, and I've talked about this before, is that as the federal government and the state government have funding issues, it usually coincides with counties and cities having funding issues. And so there's not one entity at that point that can really step in because we're all under strain. And the strain that often comes in social services. And what I've always said is the relevancy of government matters, because when things are bad, government has to show up. Like when people are in need, government has to show up. That's how we feel about natural disasters. That's how we feel about economic downturns. That's certainly how we felt about pandemics, where the county and the state had to show up. And so it's kind of a wait and see at this point, because we still don't know what we're doing yet.
Claire did have her hand up, but I don't.
Clara.
Yeah, Clara?
Yeah, I hope you guys can hear me. I put in my headphones. I was just wondering if anybody can speak to some of the volatility I'm seeing in the reproductive health section. It just seems like there's a lot of high percentages plussing and minusing in all the departments, and I'm wondering if there's been some major changes overall or if there's some easy explanation.
Right, is there a, like, sorry, I'm waiting for the ambulance to pass. And so in some of these instances, as when you're talking about the percentage changes, some of it is, you know, it's 100%, but it's $880. And so in some instances, for example, the lockbox fees is $880 that is not proposed. And so there's just a shift and a change in how we're processing payments, or in other instances, to Andy's point earlier, we're trying to better align with what's actually happening. We've been really trying to take a closer look at our public health department and the services that we can actually provide, to the point of the question earlier about maternal, child, and health, looking at what can our public or our maternal, child, and health staff actually see on a daily basis in regard to the number of clients, and then what's billed to Medicaid, rather than being optimistic that we're going to increase those numbers and then not be able to hit those numbers. And so budgeting to more to what we actually know we can perform and do.
So the actual service level, if I'm correct, is not being diminished. It's just more accurately depicting what can be accomplished with the staff that are working in these programs. There have been years where we've estimated higher in terms of workload than what we could actually perform. So, and it's only because you can see so many clients on a day. And so I think that's the biggest story.
I mean, I think some of my concerns are more some of the funding drops that aren't like an even 100% drop, like the grant ran out or something like that. Like, for example, on page 243, there's a 90% drop from family planning fees, an 86% from public health donations. There's another drop from care fees or C-care fees. There's a couple of those that aren't like an even 100%, which we've been seeing where a grant ran out. It seems like, again, a little bit more volatile than some of the other sections we've looked at.
Yeah, and in some instances, there are, just in regard to the number of clients who come. I mean, we can only control the people who come in, so therefore who we're able to bill. And if we're seeing decreases in clients, then we're going to be seeing decreases in the revenues that we're collecting. Donations are something that, in all honesty, it's in many departments, we really don't budget for that, because you can never really anticipate what a donation amount is going to be. And so decreases in donations is, I don't know. Yeah, it's volatile.
Commissioner Banks.
I just want to take a moment and state my appreciation for kind of how you're, I don't know, truing up the budget, and what we've already discovered is a constrained situation across the state, but also across the county and across the nation. And so I appreciate staff working extremely hard to dial in the numbers to the point of what are we doing and how much money do we need to do it, versus inflating the numbers when we don't really have room for inflated numbers right now. And so this just, I think, will help staff feel more comfortable about their, just everything overall. And I appreciate it.
And I do just want to add to, and this might help Clara, in regard to some of the percentage changes that you're seeing. So when staff are building these proposed budgets, what you all have in comparison, because this is budget law, so this is what we have to put in, is you see the 24-25 budgeted amount. But what staff is proposing is based on what is actually projected to occur in 24-25. And so, for example, if you look at the family planning fees and the actual amount that was received in 23-24, that was $2,741. In 22-23, it was only $554. So in 24-25, what was budgeted was greater than 23-24, but now they're trying to true up to get to what we actually anticipate based on the projected numbers in 24-25. Does that make sense?
Recalibrated.
Yeah.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. I have a slightly different lens I want to put on this. When we as a board and our budget committee are looking at the budget, we see what's internal to us. Board members do liaisons and have outside assignments where we're looking at other things, like, for example, the Community Action Team, CCA, other state agencies. When we're looking at the board's strategic planning process, this may be too big an ask, but if we could look at not only what we're doing inside here in Plateau County, but we could look at our partner agencies and how to rebalance and reconfirm with a little more quantifiable data at some point, it might help community members and staff and the board get a clearer picture of reality, taking more complex factors into account. I don't know if that's a reasonable request, probably not, but well,
It's definitely aspirational.
it's aspirational. Yeah, that's my specialty, but you know what I mean? If we're looking at the point of view of the grassroots consumer, citizen, non-citizen, whoever is here, they don't care about these numbers. What they care about is when I have a need, will it be met? And then our job is to figure out how to have these complex network of relationships and resources that we manage so that their experience on the ground is a positive one. That's all. That's what I'm aspiring to. I'm trying to put it into an actionable item.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think I agree. That is something that is kind of the ultimate goal. I think that, you know, what in my 6 years here, I mean, I'm very gratified with the partnerships and the collaboration that are happening between sectors, between organizations. And I think that helps us have a certain viewpoint about opportunities to optimize. But that's even the next level, which is how do you take it to create more of a seamless service where you can observe the capacity of a system that's bigger than any one organization. And I think that's kind of more of that Zen level that we do aspire to, but I'm not sure that we're there yet. But it's good for you to remind us what the ultimate goal is. So
With the greatest possible appreciation for the work that's already happened, but always looking for what's the next level of development so that we can add more value and have room to grow, because I like room to grow.
Thank you. Are there anything staff wants to add at this stage on public health? Are there any more comments, questions, anything that the committee wants to add on public health?
if I could just really quickly, I just want to, and I can say this about all the departments, and since we have a lot of staff here, but I particularly want to say about public health too, is that, you know, public health provides some really vital services to the community. And we have passionate staff that do great work every day in very difficult environments where funding is always a challenge. There are certain service delivery areas that funding is always a challenge. And There's a strong relationship between the state and the county when it comes to public health programs. Obviously, that was evidenced during the pandemic. There's been a lot of strength and a lot of planning put into our systems. And I just think every once in a while we have to pause to think behind these numbers are people who are receiving services and their staff that are doing amazing work. And so I just want to thank the public health staff, but I more generally want to thank all staff who ever have you hear this same speech 10 times. So, but thanks to all of you. You are what's behind the numbers, and we appreciate everything that you do.
Agreed.
Including the sheriff's office.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to be into
Okay. I have a best interest in public health, given background and what my liaisons, but also some just my personal involvements are. I appreciate everything that's gone into this, and across all the departments, I think it's important to understand why we're doing what we're doing, which is, like you said, making things more efficient. I always fear that word of efficiency when you start talking about that, because efficiency also means cuts to resources, and as people try to wear more hats to become more efficient, sometimes service takes a backseat to that, and we lose the resources that allowed us to deal with influx throughout the year. I'm happy that we're able to focus what our financials are and get them to what a true goal is of where we've seen historically. But I just always caution us to be careful not to cut too much, because we make people wear more hats and do more responsibilities and take on sometimes more than what they're capable of, which comes at a sacrifice to our community and the people that are seeking our resources and utilizing them. So I'm happy with where we're headed. I just always I'm cautious about that. So that's all.
Thank you. And if I might, Chair, members of the budget committee, we're very sensitive to that also. I think, one of the balancing acts is really, when can you expect more out of fewer people or fewer dollars? And when do you just have to acknowledge that you have to do less because you have fewer dollars? And I think that's part of what we have to evaluate with every funding source, because our funding sources vacillate year to year, month to month. And so we're always at, how do we create a stable organization? Because the best way we can honor citizens, residents, and really honor our staff, honor the board's work, is to have a stable organization that shows up and does the work that the community needs when it needs it. That's easy to say. It's super hard to actually accomplish. And it's because we, local governments, have to rely on so many volatile revenue sources. I think we've done an amazing job here with the board's leadership, the budget committee's leadership, to create the stable organization that we all want. But I think as we move forward, there are going to be times where we just can't do something, because there's not enough money to actually do it, and to do it well enough to be proud of what the deliverable is. Sometimes we're getting a fraction of what it takes to fund a service. And then we have to make the decision, do we backfill that with other discretionary resources? And then that diminishes our flexibility longer term. So I don't have a crystal ball on what's going to happen with the federal government, state government. I know that the county is managing our budget in a balanced way. We understand our revenue sources, but we also know that we need these other revenue sources to really make a complete community of services. And so I'm just throwing this out because I agree with you 1,000%. You can't just expect more. But sometimes the reality is going to be for us that we can't actually do less. And that's a tough sell when we're providing critical services to the community.
And I'll just add to that, in some instances, it's a thoughtful process has taken place, because we work with a lot of our community partners. And so who is also delivering that service for the example of the household hazardous waste, Recology is staffed there all the time. So is there a better opportunity for us to get more, by us not actually operating that? And so looking at, those partnerships with, CVH or CCA or, other community partners, that they're already providing some of those services. And so if we can help in a funding sort of way, but it's actually costing us less. Does that make sense?
So is that our new motto, Clatsop County, a complete community of services? Is this a marketing?
Maybe so. Okay, anything else from public health? Anyone online? Okay, we will then move on to general government. And that starts on page 283.
Thank you, Chair Oger. So the general government functional area has a proposed budget of $24.3 million. Again, starting with the personnel services, there's a decrease of just under 1% due to a decrease of 4 FTEs. And some of those positions are related to the public affairs officer, a GIS programmer analyst position, and reallocation of existing FTEs within the county manager's office. The materials and services increase of approximately $41,000 is mainly associated with the increase in insurance premiums that we found on page 337. The increase in debt service of $32,000 is associated with the scheduled debt payment for the jail bonds we found on page 353. The special payments decrease of $906,000 is due to the absence of spending ARPA funds, which have expired going into fiscal year 25-26. On that topic of the ARPA funds, looking at the transfers out, the decrease of $2.6 million is also a result of the expiration of the ARPA funds of approximately $1.8 million. And we're not budgeting for a transfer of the general fund stabilization funds to balance the budget. Some of those decreases are offset with new transfers of $125,000 to cover the cost of the court security at the new single point of entrance, and of approximately $341,000 in the bond UAL org unit to help offset PERS increases to the general fund and special funds. These expenses are paid from in personnel. In contingency, there's an increase of approximately 4.2%, which is again associated with not transferring funds from the general fund and stabilization fund. And just as a reminder, under this functional area, while this is the general government functional area, not all funds within this functional area are general fund. Therefore, there are special fund contingencies that have increased. There are a few additional notes to this functional area. So there's a new fund, the preservation fund is a new fund that is currently under this functional area. The fund is being established to account for the aging infrastructure and square footage utilized by county departments and staff. Non-general fund org units will be assessed a 2% capital maintenance fee based upon the accumulated depreciation and percentage of square footage utilized. These funds will be used to continue to preserve the various buildings where county services and operations are performed.
Is this a cash fund or really more of an accounting?
Big funds, and I'll just add, so this is part of the indirect costs that get charged to the special fund, additional. And so it's not that the general fund isn't contributing to this as well. It's just that the general fund, so the square footage of all those general fund departments that will just be the general fund cost. And so we don't bill ourselves to then reimburse it.
You bear those expenses.
This is important real quick, just because we do have aged buildings, and so collecting the 2% depreciation allows us to just create a little bit more capital availability to maintain these facilities. And so it's not a lot of money, but having money to maintain these facilities is really important.
I'm sorry. Mr. Banks.
No question, just an acknowledgement of what county manager stated, that I appreciate, these monies being saved for future capital improvements needed. I've seen too many budgets, some of our school districts and so on and so forth, who didn't have that forethought to keep up with the improvements needed within their buildings. And it can devastate a budget if suddenly your furnace goes out or you need a new roof. And so I just appreciate this forward thinking.
And just one last note, this is just kind of how this was categorized initially, but on further review, this preservation fund will be moved into the functional area of land use, transportation, housing, economic development, and capital, as this area is more reflective of those funds.
So there were a number of written questions. Why don't we take those first and then go to questions that people have as a follow-up?
Sounds good. So one of the first questions you had on this functional area was specific to the discretionary revenue on page 285. First question, what were the actual property tax revenues collected in 2024? Approximately it's $11,542,797. How close is the 11.67 million estimate in the current year? We're actually trending a little bit closer to 11.9 million in the current year, which overall is a 3.5% increase to the previous year, which really falls in line with our AD growth between 3 and 4%.
Yeah.
The question of room tax revenues collected in 2024 were approximately $713,000. And how close was the budgeted amount of $950,000 in the current year? Might have been a little ambitious for the 24-25 budget for the $950,000. We're actually trending closer to about $815,000. The question of timber revenues collected in 2024 was approximately $4.8 million. And in the current year, how close are we to hitting the $4.72 million estimate? Right now, it's trending to coming closer to approximately 4.3 million by the end of 24-25. But however, fluctuations by quarter are frequent, and the next quarter may make up for all of our parts of this under collection. Those were for discretionary revenues.
Oh, yes.
Just some background knowledge behind the timber revenues. They were behind on their sale plans this year because of the hefty fire season that they had. So instead of getting all of their sales out in Q2, it was closer to the beginning of Q3. And so there was just a delay. But I don't think that it should impact the closer to 4 point. I don't think it'll increase that number at all. It's just probably why we saw a lag this year.
We're 1 quarter different than them, and so that's why it'll most likely make up in the next quarter.
Good one.
Is there,
Please.
can't see you down there. I'll never forget the person who was sitting in the Cannon Beach Library and said to me one day, well, Commissioner, you know that District 5 is where the money comes from. And I've been asking for a number of years, do you have any breakdown on exactly where in the county the revenue comes from by proportion? Nobody's ever wanted to do and give us a map or something. It's always interesting to me when I consider that.
Are you looking at timber revenue specifically?
Room tax revenue, all of those. I mean, we've got beachfront mansions, we've got forests, we've got transient lodging. So I kind of thought it made sense, but we didn't come to agreement, and I don't have actual data. It would just be interesting to me. It may be onerous to collect that information. I don't want to add a burden, but
we'll just have to check the staff and see.
Yeah.
For each of those individual revenue sources, what kind of underlying attribution that there is for that actual collection. I think for the timber revenues, we do have it, because we have it by code. But we'd have to check on some of the others, but we can work on that just to see. So,
I know you're listening.
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was just curious, the 25-26 room tax, does that reflect the recent increase?
No.
No, okay.
Well, and we haven't approved
We
it.
haven't done it.
And so, yeah.
I'm just wondering if that was in the projection at all. Yeah.
Okay. There was a question on page 326 for information systems. Is our cybersecurity program robust enough? We regularly are reviewed by CAS for our cybersecurity measures and have a very robust program that staff are always looking to improve. Subsequent question is if we should be doing more. The internal threats are our biggest concern, that being the potential for staff to accidentally click on links. We have ongoing training that occurs on a monthly basis with all employees to help keep staff aware and vigilant.
I wanted to just note, this was my question, and it is, I mean, everything that I've read is a tremendous risk to counties, hospitals, cities, companies, that people will break into these systems, and the cost is going to be crippling.
Yep.
So I don't want our answer to be too confident.
Well, yeah, what I would say is, it's one of the things that keeps me up, because there's expansive, highly motivated folks that are trying to generate revenue off of other people, the opportunity to take advantage of other people. And so it's definitely something that's on all of our radar screen. We have a very robust backbone of security. We have our systems tested regularly for intrusion tests. We train our staff monthly on those threats, because that is one of the biggest threats is our own staff. I think that my experience, we're probably doing, kind of the best practices, but the best practices are not going to be insurance that you're not going to get attacked. And so there is insurance involved for the county, so we have insurance in case something does happen. But we have an amazing IT staff that's committed to doing everything we can. But as we've seen, even the most lockdown systems are vulnerable. And so I think it's something that a lot of counties are very sensitive to, but there's been a lot of public sector exposure. And so, and it's always going to be high on our priority list. But I'm not sure there's ever going to be total security. So,
And all the staff in this room can speak highly of how much they love doing their Ninja reviews. And they get very excited Monday morning when they come in and see that on there. So.
Yeah, there are monthly videos that go out to all of our staff, and there's a little quiz.
Like the commissioners.
Yeah, and the commissioners.
Yeah.
That's kind of sarcastic.
I mean, I've learned so much. Sometimes I don't do my drink.
Mr. Thompson, did you?
Well, and I think that's the excellent question, because every system is going to have some kind of error that's going to happen. We just know it's going to happen. I appreciate the level and the complexity and the completeness of our approach, because it is relentless on the part of it, and it needs to be relentless because criminals are out here making money relentlessly. So that makes good sense to me. And the insurance makes good sense to me, because there's got to be a net to allow for human fallibility.
Okay. Next question was regarding the general fund stabilization on pages 342, 343. We could provide additional detail on the general fund stabilization, how it fits in the budget as a whole, and what are the projections for its future. So the general fund stabilization, it is a long-term resource. If you budgeted revenue, should budgeted revenues fall short and reduction of expenditures is not enough to offset the reduced revenues. The general fund stabilization is included in the reserves that make up the board's 20 to 30% fund balance goal. So all those pieces of the general fund stabilization and the unappropriated fund balance and contingency make up that formula. The American Rescue Plan question of how is the remaining $433,000 of the ARPA funds to be used? So those revenues are earned on the interest of the ARPA funds that are not restricted and will go towards paying for paying 6 months of the housing manager position that was funded by ARPA, as well as other administrative overhead costs. And I believe that was the last question that we had submitted for this functional area. Turn it back over to the committee for any other discussion or questions.
Good. Do people have questions online or in person on any of the general government funds? Any hands? No? Okay. So that means the next thing to look at is the stipend for the Board of County Commissioners, and that recommendation can be found on page 289. And this is the responsibility of the non-elected members of the Budget Committee. So if staff wants to review what those recommendations are.
So currently what's in place in the budget for the stipend is 3%, which follows the anticipated cost of living adjustment. That's what's in place currently. It looks like we have a question.
Clara, yes.
Just a clarification. I'm sorry, did you say it's on page 289?
Yes, it's the commissioner stipend on page 289, line item 82-2931, down towards the bottom of materials and services.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions or comments in this matter? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion. And again, this is just the non-electeds. A motion to approve the Board of County Commissioners stipend.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Can we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
And I'm just going to clarify for the record that was Clara who seconded.
All right. Thank you very much. We now move to the group of funds under land use and transportation, economic development, and capital. So the county staff will take us through those funds.
Thank you, Chair Oger. So as always, it's a little bit of a mouthful. So land use, housing, transportation, economic development, and capital functional area has a proposed budget of $50.9 million. In personnel services, there's an increase of approximately 2.6%, which we contributed to the cost of living adjustments and increased health insurance retirement costs. However, this increase is also offset by a decrease of 1.55 FTE related to the natural resource manager and the planner positions. In materials and services, there is a slight decrease of 2.7%. And these can be contributed to the cost controls that were accomplished collectively by all departments. In capital outlays, there's an increase of $500,000, which is mainly associated with the proposed construction of the Westport Bypass Road to help eliminate the truck traffic in the residential areas. Within special payments, this is where the BRIC grant is located. So the increase of $17.6 million is associated with the federal and state pass-through funds for the BRIC grant, as well as $2.7 million for housing assistance and $1 million related to the construction of the Westport Bypass Road. Transfers out have increased $40,000, mainly associated with an increase of video lottery funds being transferred to planning. And the contingency amount has increased to 1.4 million, which again is related to transferring the opioid settlement funds into this functional area. Some additional notes for this functional area, again, speaking to both the housing assistance and the opioid settlement funds. These are relatively new funds, but we're just placing them in their own area so we can track them easier. The Housing Assistance Fund has been established to support the efforts of the Governor's Office to improve shelter bed capacity in Clatsop County through legislative funding. Funds received are pass-through dollars to community partners providing shelter and rehousing services to residents of Clatsop County. Fortunately, these funds are kept by the county in accordance with the funding agreement to pay for the administrative oversight. And as for the opioid settlement funds, these are related to the national lawsuits against several companies for their role in the opioid crisis. Clatsop County is a participant in this litigation and is a recipient of these funds. The budget reflects the anticipated cost for getting a SUD treatment program up and running through CBH in collaboration with the schools. There's approximately $1.3 million budgeted in contingency for further development of prevention programs with the schools, so funds can be allocated to support this work. And this is another last note, upon further review, both the opioid settlement funds and the housing assistance funds will be moved into the functional area of health and human services, as this area is more reflective of these funds.
And I would like to just add a couple other things. Going back to the personnel services with the decrease of 1.55 in the natural resource manager, I would just like to make note that previously we had a natural resource manager who was 50% in fisheries and 50% in parks. And so now we've elevated and we have a park supervisor and then we have the fisheries supervisor. So there is still that level of management within each of those, and then the oversight continues to come from the public works director and his team. And then just in regard to the emergency order funds, and so again, this is one of those things that Dawn spoke to earlier. This is state funding. We do not yet know what the governor's budget looks like. And so at this point in time, we are budgeting, anticipating that they are going to maintain the levels that they have provided for the 23-25 biennium for those 80 shelter beds that were created. And so to Andy's point, when we originally received these emergency order funds, we didn't know what this looked like and what it meant. And so that's why we budgeted it in the general fund. But if it's going to continue to come to us, then having its own separate fund, which again would go under that Health and Human Services umbrella of program.
So again, what we'll do is go through the written questions that were submitted to management and then take additional questions and comments afterwards.
Great. First question is regards to building codes. If we could comment on how staffing difficulties and building codes are affecting efficiency, safety, and revenue. Also note that there is $0 budgeted for contractual services in this fund and only $1,000 for IGA services, and if that's realistic. So this department is fully staffed. We reflected in page 398. Historically, this department does not budget for contractual services. In 24-25, funds were budgeted to help with the plan review and anticipating an implementation for major construction occurring at the GP Wanna Mill. Should there be a need for contracting with the company to assist with the plan review for any major projects or increasing IGA services with the city, there is $1.7 million in contingency funds.
And I will just go back to kind of to Clara's point earlier too around the public health. Oftentimes we have budgeted things in anticipation for. And so in this instance, we have contingency. And so we're not trying to inflate the budget, the materials and services if we don't need to. And so we have the contingency there. And if we need to make an adjustment, we can come before the board mid-year to do so.
So, I mean, to me, this is an area where the quicker and the more efficiently these matters can be, for codes, can be judged and can be issued, the more revenues that the county gets and the more jobs that are created. So efficiency here for me is a very important matter. That's,
And it is for staff too. I mean, we want to be able to really process building permits and the inspection processes that go with them in a timely manner. And I think that our current staff and the staffing levels that we have, given what the activity level is, we have that occurring there. So now we do have to help some other jurisdictions sometimes, so.
yes.
The next question was related to fisheries. If we could explain what the fisheries assessment is and why it is being ignored. These funds are a voluntary assessment that the fishermen pay into and contribute to the county fisheries program. These funds decrease significantly when legislation forced gill netters off the main channel to select area fisheries. And then
Does this mean that the fishing industry doesn't appreciate enough what the county is doing?
No, so I think that they appreciate it, but I did think, and I'm sure if you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that there's just been a lot of change that has been occurring, and there's been for quite a while funding sources that were adequate to do the work that needed to be done. But the reality going forward, like a lot of the stories that we've heard, some of those funding sources are not as reliable as they once were. And so I think there is going to come a time where we're going to have to talk to the industry about whether or not they want to help contribute to maintaining the current service levels that we're able to afford. And we'll just see how that works over time. I think that the processors value it, but there's just been so many changes to their business. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, they were very appreciative to have the new ramp out at the fish pens there. And certainly it was tough to collect that assessment, even when things were really good. When fishing was really good, they were having a hard time getting compliance on it. Now you've just got a handful of guys that are out there, and they're really scraping. So I just don't think I just think it's something that's an economic issue more than anything for fishing fleet.
Mr. Sullivan.
the question about the industrial development revolving fund, what is the $1 million in special payments for in the industrial development fund? So these funds are for engineering, improvement, rehabilitation, construction, operation, and maintenance in full or in part, including pre-project planning costs of any development project that is located in an industrially zoned area within the county, and that could directly result in specific industrial and commercial activities. The $1 million is to help the development of the Westport Road bypass to remove industrial and commercial traffic off the residential streets in Westport.
Which, just so everybody knows, we've made huge progress with the project and we're getting close. And so, there. It's the work of our public works folks.
And I would just add tourist traffic also going to the boat ramp launch recreation park. What is the name of it? Westport Park. Westport Park. Thank you. So creative. But yeah, it's also to remove ongoing tourist traffic off of the residential area.
Sure. So this last question in regards to housing assistance, we touched on this a little bit, but to provide additional detail on the uses of the housing assistance funds. So there's currently legislation to make the emergency operation shelter and rehousing funds allocated through HB 5019, part of the governor's budget and not emergency order funding. These funds are specific to the shelter beds created in response to the EO funding. When the county originally budgeted for these funds, it was unknown if this would be ongoing funding, so it was budgeted within the dues and special assessments organizational unit within the general fund. Since this funding is intended to be ongoing, is being pulled out of the general fund and budgeted in its own fund for better transparency. These are pass-through funds from the state that are reimbursed to contracted subrecipient providers, and the county keeps a small portion for administrative oversight.
The commissioner, yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Webb.
Yes, since we have recently sold a piece of real estate that we have always fondly called our industrial park in Warrenton, I wonder, I can't remember if we've seen that money appear anywhere in this budget.
It's in the Industrial Development Revolving Fund, beginning on page 414, I believe. And so the revenue that we received this year is reflected in the beginning balance for 25-26.
Okay, and so it's going to stay in that fund?
Yes.
Yes, because there's statutory rules that we have to follow for the spending of those monies. And so to the point of the road project, the $1 million, this meets that statutory guideline. And so we will be using $1 million of those funds to help offset the cost of the Westport Road bypass.
Oh, whoa. Okay, and don't we have to justify some kind of economic development interest in that?
That area is an industrially zoned area, and it is increasing the rock barge and hauling that is occurring out in Westport. And so again, there's a lot of industrial truck traffic that is currently going on the residential road that we will be diverting off the residential road for that continued growth of that rock business.
Direct benefit.
Yeah, Chair, members of the board, what I would also say to Commissioner Webb's question is that this will come back to the board for formal action at a later date, but just for budget purposes, it is coming out of the industrial revolving budget, and we will come with that specific project for your board's approval at a future date.
Good. Okay, thank you.
On the housing assistance, this last question, can you break down what projects that specifically are being supported?
So it's continuing to support the shelter beds at the Columbia Inn and lifeboat services, as well as the rapid rehousing fund that is operated through, or those funds get processed through Classic Community Action.
Okay, other questions, comments?
I think she just answered it. So good.
Oh, Clara has a hand up.
Clara, yes, please.
I have two questions. And I believe they may be related. The first one is going to be on page 390. And it's under funding sources for planning division. There's a 570% increase in short-term rental applications. And I see that number seems to fluctuate every other year. So I'm wondering if that's because a lot of these are 2-year applications.
That is correct. It is a 2-year
Okay.
application. And then also we are going before the board at a later date to increase that application fee.
Okay, so that's my first question. And then my somewhat related one is on page 402. Under funding sources for the county tourism, also under short-term rental applications, there's a 233% increase, but that one doesn't seem to fluctuate as much. So I'm wondering if you could give me some more information on that.
The short-term rental application, I'm trying to think, that's not an every year fee. That is scale. The short-term rental application fee, do you recall, is that like a 2-year?
It's 2 years and the board increased the fee to $1,000 effective May 1st.
Okay, it's a 2-year fee and the board increased it effective May 1st to $1,000.
So does that fee that people pay in, is it getting split between these different departments?
Yes. And that is also one of the things that was talked about earlier in regard to the efficiencies. And so previously the application process for the STRs was done through the tax and assessment office. But that application process is now going to the planning department, which will help from an efficiency perspective because the planning department already does a lot of the work for approving the STRs. And so now that's just one location that the applicant will have to go to.
Okay. And on the STRs, are we anticipating an increase or decrease in those on the county level?
Are you talking about actual STRs or transient room tax?
Yes, like actual homes being used for this.
I believe that we remain status quo on the number of STR applications that we have.
Okay.
Except outside of coastal residential
Yeah.
areas.
Okay. Other questions? Other comments? All right. Then we move on to the next set of funds. This is the culture and recreation.
Thank you, Chair. Over. So under the culture and recreation functional area, the proposed budget is approximately $3.6 million. In personnel services, there's a decrease of 1.2%, which is mainly associated with a 0.5 decrease in FTE. We touched on this earlier. This is related to the natural resource manager who's split funded. While not filling the natural resource manager position, another position has been elevated to the Parks Ranger to account for those responsibilities, and oversight will be provided by the Public Works Director. The decrease of $41,000 in materials and services is related to the decrease for contractual services in the Park and Land Acquisition Maintenance Work Unit on page 468. The capital outlay increase of $230,000 is mainly associated with the food repair project at the fairgrounds. In transfers out, there's a slight increase of $6,000 to the Parks and Maintenance budget on page 468. And overall, the contingency decrease of $92,000 can be attributed to the increase in capital outlays. We did receive one additional question for this functional area. On page 75, the recollection is that the cost of the Fair and Expo Hall roof was $300,000, and now it's showing $600,000, and if something has changed. So the original $300,000 was just an estimate. The Fair Board had a comprehensive assessment done to assist with developing an RFP and an approach to address the overall needs of the envelope of the facility. And the cost came in greater than what was originally anticipated. Staff worked closely with the consultant to discuss the most cost-effective alternatives, and the Fair Board and Fair staff have proposed this expense in the budget. And I believe that's the only question we received. Turn it back over to the committee for further discussion.
Questions, comments, observations? Commissioner Webb.
Yeah, thank you. I am perplexed that for the, I don't know, maybe sixth year in a row, I don't see anything in our budget about doing a plan for the future of our recreational services in Clatsop County. We have done a significant amount of work redoing our comp plan, which really didn't include a lot about tourism as a vital sector of our economy. And I think that as we are continuing to face timber and other this chaos at the federal level, which is now, of course, bending down to the state and local level, I'm very concerned that we have not taken a substantial look at the opportunities in Clatsop County for the future of culture and recreation. And I'm a little disturbed that that we have seen an enormous change in our parks and recreation program. And I think that I'd just like to express that that I think this is when we're pretending that we're doing a lot of work about economic development, and because recreational tourism in our natural areas is something that we're not addressing. And I'm pretty upset about it. Every year I come to the board to ask that we do a plan for our parks department, and every year somebody decides that it's not going to happen. And I'd like to express that I'm going to start getting noisy about this.
But,
Commissioner Thompson.
well, Commissioner Webb, I appreciate your point. We've been spending a lot of time talking to the tourism industry on what's an allowable allocation of those transient tax dollars. And I thought, well, gee, wouldn't it be a good idea to take some of those and do that plan that Commissioner Webb rightly talks about? Because I think everybody wants to do it. The question, how do we pay for it? Is it allowable to use transient tax dollars to pay for that? I would have to
Probably not.
Yeah, we'd have to look at that.
Well, I just like us to do that.
Yeah, if I can go back, we did talk about this last year, during the year, and we had talked about pursuing a grant to pay for it, and that didn't occur. And so I think that, again, for me as a county manager, with, following the board's budget policies and obviously having future stability of the organization in mind, it's not in the budget right now. We have had to reduce expenditures, and we had to make some pretty tough calls to do that, to set us up for the future. I think that as we get more clarity about transient lodging tax, as we get more clarity about some of the discretion that we may have with the dedicated portion of the transit lodging tax, if we get any, the board could have conversation mid-year about what are those things. So I'm kind of going back to my repetitive statement, which is we'll be coming back mid-year to talk about a lot of things, but to get the budget where we needed to get to, there were some tough decisions made. So I don't think it takes everything off the table permanently. It just makes it so that we'll have to come back and talk about that as we get more clarity. So,
Commissioner Vance.
My thought process is along the lines of, when we have excess dollars, we can address, stuff outside of what our residents need. And right now our residents need our social services to survive. They need the core of our government to survive. And I would say that we are pretty close to a budgetary crisis. We're not at a budgetary crisis because of our amazing staff tightening their belt. And as we're facing more potential cuts, I don't see the excess, fat in the budget to dedicate to tourism, recreational areas, when at the forefront of my concerns are how are our social services surviving this budgetary constraints and the future fiscal constraints that could potentially happen to us. And so in seasons where our budget could be potentially fatter, and we have monies to spend a little bit in other areas, I feel like that would be an intelligent thing to pursue for us so that our tourists are then happy also. But right now our tourists come and we're worried about our roads and other social services that are facing those impacts. So I think that we need to shore up our social services facing the impacts of tourism before we start increasing the appeal of more visitors I mean, we have a ton of visitors right now, and so we need to shore up our services to handle what we already receive before we need to start making ourselves more attractive to even more people. So I understand Commissioner Webb's want in order to spend money toward tourism, but right now, I mean, if we were spending money towards tourism, I would hope we would be spending it on our sheriff's department and our fire departments and those who are responding to the abundant traffic accidents that are occurring on the highway.
I just have one quick comment. I interact with a lot of people out there. And one of the comments that I hear is a pretty consistent discussion. Why it happens in my veteran, because everyone no idea. But about they can't find a doctor, they can't find a professional. And I really think that the comment that I want to make is that I think the Parks and Recreation is very important to keeping our professionals here. Because we need as a county to be able to provide things to do outside of work, other than going to bars and restaurants. And one of the things that I personally would like to see, and I don't know that this is ever going to be possible, but I would love to see the aquatic center become a county facility as opposed to a city. I don't know that that's possible. I think as a county revenue, it would help keep our professionals here. And I don't know if that's in this kind of area of the budget or not, but it's something that I hear consistently in my consistently with that.
Just as a matter of fact, that the aquatic center loses money, loses hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
And that may be way out of base here, I don't know. But if it were a county facility, the tax-based revenue would be much larger. We could draw, and maybe that would help keep some of our professionals here. The KCI can't even get an eye doctor right now. We need those professionals in order to keep our residents here, which is our tax base, and our tourists, which bring them lots of money. So that is my comment.
Thank you. Commissioner Webb, do you have any additional comments? No? Okay. Anyone else have any comments or questions on the cultural and recreation group of funds? Any at all?
Saves on mental health expenditures. I mean, it really does. I remember going to the unemployment office once upon a time. Part of what they said to us was make sure that you recreate. And if we can recreate locally and we make recreation available locally, it's better for everybody. And I'd like to pay with it. But those transient occupancy tax dollars, if at all possible.
Commissioner Webb has her hand up.
Yeah, Commissioner Webb, do you have additional comments?
Yes, I do. In my 50 years of serving government, I think it has become abundantly clear to me, especially watching our national government right now, that one of the challenges at governing effectively is to have a balanced strategic plan, is to being able to understand what resources come into a jurisdiction and how those dollars support what the jurisdiction has to offer its citizens. And I think that especially if anybody here has ever had an economics course and done input-output analysis, one of our problems in Clatsop County is that we don't generate enough money to meet the dreams that we have to serve our population. And we've got to start turning attention to doing that. We have to start really getting serious about economic development and about bringing outside dollars in. When outside dollars come in, they go into the pockets of local citizens. And those are the people who support our community. So I think we have to be thinking that funding one public service does not necessarily mean not funding something else. I think we have to be looking at our budget as a well-rounded entity that does both serve our local citizens, but also put money in their pockets to support those local services. That's what that's all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Quayle.
Well, I would just say, I mean, the budget process starts right after July. We just go into, we adopt a budget and there's a constant refinement and communication that happens. We come back several times, talk about our priorities. So it's not a surprise when we come to the budget, what's in the budget. I mean, I think we have to kind of recognize there are many points along the way that if we want to reshuffle or reprioritize, we have that ability to do so. And we also have a strategic planning process. So we identify what our priorities and our goals are during the strategic planning process. So I do think that we are doing a very good job in identifying what the majority of the board has decided are priorities that we're budgeting effectively in those things. And I'm open as anyone is, as we go along. If we think we need to start changing or doing something differently, I think everyone's open to that. But this has been a very transparent process, so I don't want to sound like, this has been mentioned and somehow it's been covered up. We talk about it openly all the time in public meetings. So that's what we have to kind of remember, is that everybody's participating in this. We're all making decisions about what we think is important. And it's reflected in this budget. It's been a very good process year after year. And I do appreciate the job that Andrew and Monica have done. And Don, of course.
Commissioner Banks.
And in regards to Commissioner Thompson's transient lodging tax comments, we've seen some potential at the state level for more flexibility. And I think that
For the first time in 22 years.
for the first time in 22 years. And that's amazing. And so our whole world and how we budget can change
Exactly.
at the end of session, potentially, with transient lodging tax changes, because that would change our fiscal outlooks on how we are able to spend the dollars that we receive from tourism. And we could potentially spend those dollars for more tourism. And I feel like that is a very healthy manner to be spending those funds, is how do we help support tourism with those transient lodging taxes and the potential flexibility. And thank you to the chair and to Rep. Javity and to our county staff and to our CFM advocates for really auguring into those potential changes. And I'm hopeful. So
Yeah, there have been a lot of people working very hard to try to promote this change in the transient lodging tax and promote flexibility and encourage a way that we can make it work better for our needs. That's what counts. So I do appreciate everything that's been done from the staff, from commissioners that have been testifying, and then also from CFM advocates. They've been doing a great job.
Other comments? Questions?
Can we break so we can get a little?
Hearing and seeing none,
We're just about
we
done.
will
We're just about done, right?
We want to
move
get done,
to
then we gotta start.
one last opportunity for comments from any members of the public, either online, if there is anyone online, or in person. Anyone? They're all set.
thank you for showing us, guys.
Appreciate it.
So we now come to the culminating event. We need a motion to approve the budget with a tax rate of 0.7195 per thousand and 0.07 cents per thousand for the fairgrounds local option total levy.
I'm sorry, that is the wrong tax rate.
That's what that's,
Yeah.
it did seem like a little unusual.
for is 1.5338
Okay, so,
per thousand.
yeah, this is what they sent me.
Yeah. So it should be, need a motion to approve the budget with a tax rate of 1.5338 per thousand and 0.07 per thousand for the fairgrounds. As well as, a total levy for bonded indebtedness of $1,605,426.
Good, okay. So Monica Steele has stated the motion that we require. Can we get someone to make that motion?
So do you want it in one? We just do one?
Yeah, this is just one regard than the other.
Heck, yeah, I make that motion.
Okay, you get a second.
The budget, we approve the budget at a tax rate of $1.5338 per thousand and 0.07 per thousand for fairgrounds and local auction, with a total levy for bonded indebtedness of $1,605,426.
Thank you.
I second that motion.
Is that Clara?
No, that was Commissioner Webb.
Thank you. Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Great job. Good job, Chair Ozer. Great job.
All right.
Thank you so much for doing it.
The Board of Commissioners, as the governing body of Clatsop County, all county service districts for which this body so acts, and as the Clatsop County Local Contract Review Board is now meeting in regular session, all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Want to welcome everybody here this evening. Clerk of the Board, can we have the roll call, please?
Chair Quila,
Here.
Vice Chair Banks. Here. Commissioner Wakua,
Commissioner Wakua is excused.
Commissioner Webb.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson.
I'm here.
All right. We have the agenda in front of us. Do we have any questions about the agenda? Are we ready for a motion?
I move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. First item is a proclamation, National Maritime Day, and presenter is Jeff Smith, curator of the Columbia River Maritime Museum.
Woo!
Jeff, welcome.
Nope.
Yeah,
You can
go ahead and have a seat right there. And thanks for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. I realize I've had the privilege of coming to do this for the last 3 years. And
Yeah, we
in the
appreciate it.
past, I've waxed on about how I feel passionate about our connection to water and the oceans. And this year, I came upon a quote that I was familiar with, but it's been years since I'd looked at it, and I wanted to share that because I think it summarizes the importance of water and the ocean to our lives and our livelihood, and kind of talks to the purpose of this proclamation and the significance here in Clatsop County. So if you'll forgive me, I'll get out my phone. This was a part of a speech that was given at the America's Cup dinner in 1962 by President John F. Kennedy. And as many of you probably realize, he was very much an avid boatman and sailor and was in the Navy, so it was a subject very close to him and very personal. And he went on to say, "I really don't know why it is that all of us are so committed to the sea, except I think it is because in addition to the fact that the sea changes and the light changes and ships change, it is because we all came from the sea. And it is an interesting biological fact that all of us have in our veins the exact same percentage of salt in our blood that exists in the ocean. And therefore, we have salt in our blood, and our sweat, and our tears. We are tied to the ocean. And when we go back to the sea, whether it is to sail or to watch it, we are going back from whence we came.
Lovely.
That's great. Yeah,
My
that's
introduction.
a wonderful quote. Okay, do we have a motion?
I would move.
Moved and seconded to approve the resolution in order proclaiming May 22nd, 2025 as National Maritime Day and authorize the chair to read, then sign the proclamation. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. In the matter of proclaiming May 22nd, 2025 to be National Maritime Day. Whereas Clatsop County borders the Pacific Ocean to the west and Columbia River to the north. And whereas Clatsop County's maritime history and heritage are an integral part of our identity. And whereas these waters and shores were home to indigenous people with a rich maritime culture and traditions long before the first Europeans arrived. And whereas the Columbia River Bar is the gateway to a maritime transportation system which carries over 56 million tons of international trade with a cargo value of at least $23 billion. And whereas the Port of Astoria is a critical economic driver serving the cruise ship, commercial fishing, and seafood processing, recreational boating, tourism, and other industries of benefit to the entire county. And whereas the United States Coast Guard home ports the cutters David Duran and Florence Finch, along with buoy tender Elm and aids to navigation team Astoria in our county. And whereas the Columbia River Maritime Museum in Astoria exposes over 115,000 visitors annually to our rich maritime heritage. And whereas commercial fishing accounts for over 13% of earned income in Clatsop County and supports a significant number of related industries. And whereas boat building and repair are key growing local industries requiring skilled blue-collar workers. And whereas the Department of Labor Tongue Point Job Corps Center Seamanship Program and Clatsop Community College Maritime Science Program provide professional training for critical maritime jobs. Now, therefore, be it hereby resolved that the Clatsop County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim May 22nd, 2025 as National Maritime Day in Clatsop County and invites community members to observe this day and celebrate with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. Dated this 14th day of May, 2025, Clatsop County Board of Commissioners. Thank you very much, Jeff. We appreciate having you back every year.
Could I
My
say one thing, Mr.
Yes,
Chair?
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. I would just like to express the appreciation for myself and for the commissioners who visited Clatsop County as part of the Commissioner Exchange Program, going to the Maritime Museum and being welcomed by your director and several staff people and touring. They left just over the moon praising you, and they took jackets with them that they bought. So thanks again for that.
It's a
Thank
nice
you, Mr.
day.
Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you.
Next is a proclamation, Emergency Services, or Emergency Medical Services Week, and Jen Munson, Emergency Management Community Engagement Coordinator, and Amazing Rain, Meredix Paramedic. Thank you both for being here.
Good evening, Commissioners. Happy EMS Week. Thank you for considering the secondary proclamation this evening. So EMS Week is National Emergency Medical Services Week, and it's celebrated from May 18th until the 24th this year, and it honors the dedicated emergency medical professionals who provide life-saving care every day. One of those professionals is Amazing Rain, and I've invited her here to share her insights and her perspective on the work. A few more pieces of context before I turn it over. In rural areas like on the North Coast, EMS staff play a vital role in responding to emergencies across challenging landscapes, and I don't have to tell you that. For example, during summer months, coastal towns like Seaside and Cannon swell with thousands of visitors, increasing EMS call volumes to capacity. Meanwhile, many other residents in areas like Jewel or Napa live in remote forested regions along winding, flood-prone roads that can delay ambulance response times and strain resources. Compounding these issues, the county lies within the Cascadia subduction zone. You know this as well, making it susceptible to devastating earthquakes and tsunamis that could sever transportation routes, isolate communities, and overwhelm already limited medical infrastructure. All of these challenges underscore the critical need for robust, resilient, and well-coordinated EMS systems here on the North Coast. My guest tonight, a local paramedic with Medics, embodies that very resilience. As part of EMS Week, we invited representatives from local fire departments and medics to recognize the outstanding individuals who make a difference every day. The Venerable Mike Sahlberg, who has joined us here today, responded from Medics and nominated Amazing Rain, whose dedication and personal experience reflect her deep commitment to ensuring Clatsop County residents receive exceptional care in times of crisis. Amazing, would you like to take it from here?
Commissioners, forgive me, I'm going to read. I'm exhausted. Being here tonight as a representative for something that I'm so deeply passionate about is truly humbling. First, I want to thank J.D. Beaton for providing me the pathway to paramedic as well as so many others in Clatsop County and beyond. And Mike, thank you for nominating me for this recognition. There are so many who have contributed to me being the provider that I am today. I want to thank my clinical and internship preceptors. The list of people I want to thank would be keeping us here all night, but I do, however, have to specifically acknowledge someone who saw potential in me as a green and anxious newbie and gave her time, patience, and energy to mentor me. Robin Newson, your mentorship was invaluable. You taught me not just the protocols and procedures, but the awareness, the critical thinking, rapport building, and unshakable calm that truly defines excellent pre-hospital medicine. Robin, thank you so very much for believing in me and encouraging me when I had my doubts. This moment is not just for me. It belongs to the brave individuals who answer the call day in and day out, often facing unimaginable circumstances. It belongs to the dispatchers who answer the phones, the law enforcement officers who stand between us and danger, the firefighters who not only combat fire, but frequently provide pre-hospital care, and especially tonight for EMS Week, this moment belongs to the volunteer first responders. These volunteers are our neighbors, our friends, our family members who dedicate their precious time and energy and often their own resources to be there at our most critical moments of need. They train tirelessly and sacrifice personal time. They pour their hearts into serving their communities without expecting a paycheck in return. Their dedication is the purest form of selfless service, and it is the bedrock of emergency response in our area. We owe them immeasurable debt of gratitude. Within this remarkable community, I want to recognize the women who are increasingly stepping into these vital roles. Women EMDs, EMTs, paramedics, firefighters, emergency room nurses, and doctors throughout every department, everywhere. We are everywhere. We're breaking down barriers, demonstrating resilience, empathy, sharp intellect, and undeniable skill that elevate the entire team. Women bring unique perspective with unwavering dedication to a field that has historically been male-dominated. It's an absolute joy and inspiration to work shoulder to shoulder with the many women of Clatsop County, EMS, tackling challenges and making a real difference together. And to any young woman watching or listening to this, know that you too can be a leading light. Your strength, your compassion, and your perspicacity are fundamentally vital. We all know that no single responder works in a vacuum, and the seamless coordination between dispatchers, firefighters, paramedics, and law enforcement is what truly makes our system effective. I'm a transplant to Clatsop County, and I admit it was something to adjust to living in Clatsop. We face unique challenges being rural with those annual influxes that Jen mentioned, and our resources that we have here often don't meet the needs for the high level of care that people need. I've had numerous experiences which showcase our ability to work together. It's a rare that I am the first person to arrive on the scene, whether it's someone's home or a motor vehicle accident in the street. But I have hiked with fire departments to the patient's side. I've stood by the water waiting for rescue teams to bring me the patient. And And I've worked codes and traumas with fire and law enforcement, and together we have stabilized and loaded patients into helicopters or transported them as a team to local emergency departments. EMS is a community within a community in Clatsop County. EMS has displayed incredible cooperation and coordination throughout divisions and systems, providing mutual aid and always placing safety and patient care first. Additionally, we face the weather challenges presented by our weather patterns out here. It's not always safe to fly in and out. And when a patient requires that higher level of care, the clock does not stop. This means we often take patients by ground on trips greater than 2 hours. These patients often require high-level medical management throughout. We may be taking a patient on a ventilator with 6 IV pumps, down highways that are full of bumps and potholes on a stretcher that is anything but plush. What was working in the hospital while they laid on that bed with a nice cushion may not be working as well anymore or at all. Stabilization can change, equipment can fail, and there's no code blue alert to call for additional crew members, which means Clatsop County is relying on us all to be the best of the best when they need us. That said, my heartfelt gratitude and our united heroism, while indispensable, are not enough. We could not continue to rely so heavily on the goodwill and sacrifice of our volunteers while neglecting the fundamental infrastructure that supports them. It's a moral imperative and frankly a matter of public safety that we as a community address the critical underfunding of 911 ambulance services. Our ability to consistently provide excellent care is facing significant challenges. The national EMS shortage is placing an unsustainable burden on those of us currently in the field, which leads to overwork and ultimately burnout. Therefore, I've brought with me tonight several calls to action. To federal, state, and local policymakers, I implore to recognize EMS as an essential public safety service and invest in accordingly. To hospital administrators and insurance companies, as healthcare leaders, I encourage you to partner with EMS to optimize patient care and reimbursement structures. To aspiring first responders, I say answer the call. A career in EMS offers purpose, impact, and community service. And to current pre-hospital providers, your dedication saves lives. Advocate for the support you deserve. We are the front line when the unthinkable happens. We're the calm in the storm. We are the ones you call when it's your loved one, your neighbor, or even yourself facing an emergency. And when it's your emergency or your child struggling to breathe, you're a parent experiencing chest pain, or a friend trapped in a motor vehicle, you want the most skilled, well-rested, and dedicated professionals arriving on the scene. Investing in pre-hospital providers is investing in the peace of mind, well-being, and very fabric of our society. This incredible opportunity to speak here tonight. I'm proud to be a paramedic in Clatsop County, and I'm committed to continuing to serve this community to the best of my abilities. I look forward to continuing to work together to ensure that emergency medical services are not just a response, but a robust and sustainable pillar of our community.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bain. Yeah. Really appreciate those very thoughtful remarks, and I think you're right to highlight the comprehensive, how many people are connected in providing that response, that critical service that we need. And you have to have your best moment when somebody's having their worst moment, and we do appreciate all you do, and please pass along our remarks and thanks to the rest of your team, because we do appreciate all that they do. I just see Commissioner Thompson has something that she wants to say.
I want to keep those remarks. I want those remarks. Thank you. Because this is the most clear and powerful and complete exposition of what we're dealing with that I've heard. This is simply astonishing and wonderful. Thank you.
Very well stated. Thank you so much.
May I add?
Commissioner Webb?
You forgot to mention that occasionally you transport county commissioners.
Yes, I don't want to name names ever, so.
But thank you very much for saving my life.
You're very welcome.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah.
It doesn't get more personal than
No,
that, does it?
absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
Commissioner Webb?
She would be the one, right?
Absolutely. I move to approve an order proclaiming May 18th, 2025 through May 24th, 2025 as Emergency Medical Services Week and authorize the chair to read, then sign the proclamation.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the resolution and order proclaiming May 18th, 2025 through May 24th, 2025 as Emergency Medical Services Week and authorize the chair to read, then sign the proclamation. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. In the matter of proclaiming May 18th, 2025 through May 24th, 2025 to be Emergency Medical Services Week. Whereas emergency medical services are a vital public service, and whereas the members of emergency medical services teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, and whereas the emergency medical services system consists of emergency physicians, emergency nurses, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, firefighters, educators, administrators, and others. And whereas the members of emergency medical services teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. Now, therefore, be it hereby resolved that the Clatsop County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim May 18th, 2025 through May 24th, 2025 as Emergency Medical Services Week in Clatsop County, and we invite all community members to observe this year's theme, honoring our past, forging our future, and recognize the work of individuals who built the EMS system as well as those leading it today and into the future. Dated this 14th day of May, 2025, Clatsop County Board of Commissioners. Thank you very much, and thank you, Jen. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move into business from the public. This is an opportunity for anyone to give a 2-minute presentation about any item on the agenda, except for public hearings, or any topic of county concern that is not on the agenda. Clerk of the board, of any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, there are not.
All right, are there any members of the public that have signed up to speak in person this evening?
No, there are not.
All right, we'll go ahead and close business from the public and move on to the consent calendar. Do we have any comments? Question?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar as presented. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next, Commissioner reports. And we'll start with Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Amanda just left, right? Yeah, there you are. You moved. Okay. So what bill was I before Chair Nathanson in the House Revenue Committee about the transient lodging tax? 3962-2, because it changed. It used to be one thing and they changed it, and now it's another thing. So I was in the audience and testified along with other Rep. Javity and some other folks. And I did something I never thought I would do. I testified about my grandmother's underwear. Now you may think, why would she do that? Because I said my grandma was born in 1887 and she wore a corset. And the current constraints on our ability to spend those transient occupancy tax dollars is like a corset whose strings need to be loosened. I don't know if that will work, but I'll tell you, it's an unforgettable image to leave in the mind of state legislators. I also, at this stage in the session, they need a little humor, right? Okay. I also spoke to do some inviting to the government affairs director at Orla, because even if we can push this bill through immediately, I expect Orla to come back at us and try and regain the absolute control they have over how much money they get and how they spend it and how we spend it. The thing is that Orla can write big checks for campaign contributions. And that gives them a lot of influence in the state legislature, as you can imagine. So my theory is if we invite them to the table, because I think I've told you I'm co-chair of AOC's Governance, Revenue, and Economic Development Steering Committee, and after the session is over and we're not dealing with legislation, we're going to talk about big money issues. We're going to talk about ports, rivers and ocean ports. Will Isom has said he'll come and talk to us. We're going to talk about seismic rehabilitation grant advisory funds, because that's $60 million right now. That's $60 million right now. And the governor is requesting another $100 million to put into schools and public safety buildings. So that's big money. Some of it's coming to Clatsop County now. Some will come in a little while. But most importantly, we're going to talk about revenue in general. The cities, the counties, the school board associations, the people who produce the revenue, the people who spend the revenue. Not that AOC can be the place where all of the decisions get made. It is a place where we can convene a meeting of people who can define the problem and bring in excellent data that can help inform a decision-making process. We'll see where the product goes. I could talk about other things, but that's probably enough for now, except to say I participated, two more quick things. The Jurisdictional Transfer Advisory Committee, which is a creature of the state legislature, and I'm representing counties from all over Oregon, but especially the rural counties as we talk about that. Just as for the Seismic Rehabilitation Grant Advisory Committee, I represent Oregon counties. So we're going forward with that. OCZMA is meeting tomorrow. There's an offshore wind meeting in Brookings. I don't think I can get to both of those because they come at the same time, so that's not going to work. But it's a busy time. I'm glad that we're able to go forward. I expect to hear more from various community agencies who will be talking to us, because I was at the Seaside Meals on Wheels, and they said, what can the county do to help us? And I said, you know, we have a public comment period. Anybody can come and talk to us for 3 minutes, and they said they would come and bring us data. And I'm assuming that you all know various kinds of community agencies that might want to come and bring us data, because what that does is not only inform us, it helps elevate the awareness, raise them up in the public eye so that we can help do more for them. Thank you. That's my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Webb.
I have two quick things. One of them is that please remember our motion, our resolution tonight about the importance of this wonderful water that we live among. In about a month, we're going to hear from a group that I represent us to, the Northwest Oregon Workforce Board, which has this year hired a specialist in marine issues, and has recently, in fact, was responsible for helping the Port of Astoria get a grant, and they are working hard. This is a man who's very, very well qualified, and in about a month he's going to come and tell you all about the work that he does at the workforce end of our maritime responsibilities, which I think we all take very carefully. And I'd just like to make a personal comment that I have been extraordinarily ill for the last few months. Had to be taken by an EMT to one of our two wonderful hospitals. But most of all, I have been struck by the outreach of people neighbors, church members, friends, colleagues, who have come to my house with homemade soups and
shopped for me and walked my very energetic dog. And it makes me so happy when my children who live far away and in urban areas to say, well, Mom, maybe you should move closer to us. And I say, no, Mom is very, very happy being retired in a small town where resources are close by and where I have more friends than I've ever had living in a city of multiple millions of people. And I'm not going to go into it. And I would love to give a shout out to our CMH, who has been unbelievably responsive to all of our needs. So unfortunately, from this dais, we talk a lot about being in a rural area where resources are lacking. And, I don't feel that way right now. I feel that I'm in an area where an awful lot of humanity lives and comes together to help people who need it.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. We do live in a very generous community, and we're glad to have you here. We're glad that things are going well. Commissioner Banks?
Had a wonderful meeting with Northwestern Senior and Disability Services. We approved the budget for the next biennium, it's a biennium budget, but we split it. However, other biennium, we split it yearly with an assumption that the next biennium will be, or the next year in the biennium will be on track. And we had additional conversations about federal funding, and we seem to be very confident so far that the funding that Northwestern Senior and Disability Services is, they're going to continue to get it. And so overall, we had discussions about their Meals on Wheels program, and we had discussions about their capacity and their staffing, and everything seemingly was shockingly okay in a time where people have been struggling. And so that was a highlight of my week, but I also had another highlight of my week with the Child Care Task Force. We are getting ready to launch grant round number 5. And we are waiting for Oregon State University's numbers to make sure that we still remain out of a preschool childcare desert, and to see if we've moved the needle on infant care. And so our new grant round, or not our new one, it's going to be the same as the previous grant round with a focus on infant toddler and scholarships. We have a certain number of students that are scholarshiped across our county by this program. And so we are going to continue to foster that scholarship, especially since ERDC funding, we still have a wait list. I think we've had a wait list since early 2024, if not 2023. And they are hopeful that there will be funding through the state to reconcile that wait list so that those children currently on a wait list will receive ERDC funding. What ERDC funding does is pay a certain percentage, and then the family offsets the rest. And that certain percentage it changes. It changes like everything in our world changes, but 75 to 85% is paid by ERDC, and then the rest is accounted for by the family, and or other resources. And so we are hopeful in this next budgetary season through the state that they are able to allocate funding to reconcile that ERDC situation. I like hope, so we're all kind of there with that. But I will say that this grant program has been extremely successful. We continue to improve upon our process. We've learned so much in the last 3 years, just in regards to not only providing grants, but then how you record keep and how you make sure to keep your providers accountable for the funds that they receive, and so on and so forth. So I'm very impressed with our current situation under the umbrella of our early learning department here locally. And so it's hopeful also. I was able to go to Salem on Monday with my daughter not as a commissioner, but as a mother. And she visited with a number of legislators regarding pediatric mental health and just regarding what can they do for our kids and our community. And she continually, I'm just going to celebrate that kid, she continually impresses me with what she brings to the table. I wish that I wasn't standing there so that people would not look at me and think I'm responsible for her research, or look at me and think that I'm responsible for her public speaking skills, because I'm not. She came out of the box that way, and I lovingly am her chauffeur. And I show her how to communicate, like, here's the email address. These are the people. This is the committee. I direct her in that manner, but everything else that she does, she just continually amazes me. And Rep. Javity launched a bill for her this year. It failed to meet a work session, and he is hopeful to bring it back next year. And she spoke with the chair of the Senate. No, she spoke with the legislative representative chair regarding potentially having that bill come back. And it would just alleviate the out-of-pocket families have to face when having their children in mental health facilities or mental health care. And so I love what she's doing, and I'll continually celebrate her. And I had some wonderful conversations with our legislative representatives also, just as a side note, really pushing the TLT and celebrating it, and being forever hopeful that it can change our budgetary outlooks in the next year. And then other than that, unfortunately, I was sick when Fair Board met a couple times. I've had this thing lingering. It's been great. And so but I'm looking forward to our newest Fair Board member interviews that are coming up at the end of the month, so we can fill that final slot. But all of the information that I'm reading that Kyle is providing is robust, it's exciting, and is very communicative. And I am forever impressed. I mean, you've passed your birthday, and now you're on your second year. You're almost a 2-year-old, and I'm just so impressed that just with the amount of communication and how it's constantly improving and constantly just your responsiveness. So it's excellent job to our new Fair Board, and I'm very excited for Fair this year and obviously for the next year. And so please, ballots are not due yet, but they are due soon. Please encourage folks to vote for that levy because the fairgrounds is dependent on the funding through that levy. So, thank you.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner Banks. And yeah, you have an outstanding daughter, and I know you're a proud mama. And
I am a proud mama.
to see that. And I agree with you. The Fair Board measure is just a renewal, so it's not an increase, and it's so needed. We had our big event out there for the hospital 2 weeks ago, and just really appreciate being able to work with Kyle and the team. It's a great facility, and it's a great group out there, and couldn't ask for a better place to have our Diamond Derby event over the last 2 years.
What a gem for tourism. I mean, the Seafood and Wine Fest was a great success.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I agree.
The Seafood and Wine Fest, great success. You know, and then we have the Scandinavian Festival. I mean, it's not just our fair. It's all those things are traditions that bring people to our community very successfully. Like hotels were packed.
Yep.
So.
Oh, I agree. And I also wanted to credit Amanda Ravenchuk with all of her hard work over the last couple of weeks. I mean, things are moving fast in Salem, and there's been a lot of movement, whether it's TLT or the HOAs, and county manager's been involved in a lot of calls over the last week. But I do appreciate putting, these kind of documents together, just really outlining what the issues are with TLT and why we need flexibility in the formula. This really spells it out, and I think this is beneficial for anybody that's, in the legislature that really doesn't quite, understand why we're arguing for what we're arguing. They just need to kind of look at this, and it's well done.
Could we send this to the committee?
And I think that we've sent it to our representative, Javity and Senator Weber, so they do have it. And it is a fabulous thing for them to work off of. So thanks for all your work on that. And thanks to our team for keeping on top of the developments in Salem. I think that was all I was going to say, wasn't I? Yeah, I guess so. Ms. Thompson.
There were 70 people signed up to testify about that bill.
Mm-hmm.
And the only municipal or county people who were for Orla's position were our Curry County folks.
Yeah.
Sorry, Coos County folks,
Yeah,
not
he
Curry.
testified at the last one.
So the idea is, what's their economic development situation that they would be inclined to do that, even though the bill is permissive? It doesn't demand that certain things happen, but it only gives us the ability to allow it. And even that's too much for Orla. So I think we're going to keep on working on it. I stayed in the hearing room afterward because Rep. Helm has a bill to add 1% to the state tourism tax to pay for wildlife. And as the executive director of Oregon Fish and Wildlife pointed out, the only way they make money is to kill things. This money would give them the ability to use money to save the lives of wildlife all over Oregon, that proposed 1%. So I think we're seeing, I don't know if groundswell is the right word. It may be too hopeful, but Orla has had a very strict control over those tourism tax dollars, and there's such a need.
Yeah.
So I think the momentum is there. I think Chair Nathanson is a reasonable person, and I think she'll be willing to listen to working it out now and later. And I'm glad that we're all having something to say about it to help move that forward, so we get that flexibility and those loosened corset strings.
Yep, I agree. And again, credit to our county manager and to Representative Javi and Senator Weber that continue to have those discussions with Chair Nathanson. And I think the only other thing I wanted to mention was with the budget process, I just really appreciate how smooth it goes, and having those questions in advance submitted, and then very thoughtful responses by our finance director and our assistant county manager. Just really pleased that it just seems to improve year after year. And that's a big accomplishment to get through that budget. And I thought it went so well tonight, and just appreciate the work of the lay members of the budget committee, and of course Chair Ozer, who has been our chair the last few years and done a fantastic job, and the commission as well. I mean, it is a lot to try to take on, and we do it, I think, fairly efficiently. And I'm real pleased that we can say with pride, that we've done a fantastic job budgeting conservatively each year. I mean, being efficient in what we're providing, and then it's always defensible. I mean, there's not a question that's asked that can't be readily answered. And so kudos to Monica, to Andrew, and our county manager. I just really appreciate your efforts. And that's all I have. County manager.
Chair Whalen, members of the board, just to follow up on the budget, I think, these are continually learning processes, and so the budget process does evolve every year, and we take input, certainly from your board, from budget committee members, but we also read the tea leaves on what's happening at the state level, the federal level, and there's just a lot of staff effort and staff input that goes into that, but really the input goes beyond that. It's our stakeholders, our partners. We get a lot of feedback about the services, service levels, and I think we're at kind of a inflection point with a lot of things right now, and the progress that we're seeing in elevating the TLT discussion to a point where we're not advocating for it by ourselves is very monumental. And I think staff has done, good work, but the board has done amazing work supporting us as we do that. And I think we're fortunate to have the support of our legislators also. But I think the message is resonating well beyond the North Coast. And so I feel hopeful, though we all know legislative processes, so we're going to keep our fingers crossed at the same time. But I think the strategy of having us tee up a 2-cent increase if they don't do anything also positions us for success. So I want to thank the board for your tactical leadership also. And really that's all that I have. There's a lot going on right now. I think a lot of it's positive. But, you know, moving forward at a time of just uncertainty is challenging. And so I don't think the challenges are behind us. They're in front of us still. And so I just think that's part of what we're trying to do, is to keep as much flexibility and all of our options open as we move forward. And so I want to thank you for your support as we do that, because it's not easy. I mean, this is a difficult time for local governments, for state government, because there's just so much uncertainty. So I want to thank you. I want to thank the Budget Committee for all their work, staff for their amazing work and dedication. So that's all.
Thank you, County Manager. And I mean, the budget evolves throughout the year, so there's a constant communication, and we have an opportunity to make decisions throughout the year. And I know there'll be some difficult decisions coming up, but certainly it starts with the staff and the department heads and everybody. That's where it starts, bringing all of their suggestions and proposals to the table. And yes, I think you're right in characterizing that it will be challenging, but we got the right team here to meet that challenge. I'm very proud of what we have accomplished as a county. I will move on then to the business items at hand. So the business agenda starts with the Benton County Jail Bed lease on page 38.
Chair and
Paul
fellow
Williams.
commissioners. I'm Paul Williams, I'm the sheriff. And I am happy to bring great news. Law enforcement is not a profit center, but this time we get to be a profit center. So, Benton County is going through, we've had a jail problem for 20 plus years. They've had one for even longer, and they have not had success in getting a bond to take care of their situation. So they have reached out to us to ask to rent 12 beds up to 12 beds from us, and we have plenty of room considering with the new facility. And so what we did was we came up with a rate that was the same that they were paying to go to a different facility, and that rate is plenty in the sense that we'll be bringing in $286,000-ish, and it'll cost us maybe about $50,000 a year in additional costs. So
that's great.
Yeah, I just had a question. Will they still be responsible for the medical care of
Yes.
their? Oh, okay, that was, you see where I was going.
Right? Yes. So anything that happens outside of the facility, also including any prescriptions, they are directly responsible for, and we will be billing them independently. So,
Excellent.
because that would be the one thing that makes a person nervous.
Yep.
County Manager.
Chair Quinn, members of the board, I just want to point out that, you know, the sheriff's office commitment to really do this and to work with us. Paul's right that it is a revenue, it's a discretionary revenue to the county that helps us pay for some of our overhead and our costs, and all of that makes a big difference. I just want to thank Paul, Undersheriff, as well as the sheriff and their leadership to actually do this, so thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, Under Sheriff Williams, I mean, I really appreciate all of your efforts. Our sheriff, I mean, yeah, to be positioned to be able to even do this is remarkable.
Be able to help ourselves and them is a great place to be.
Absolutely. Commissioner Webb, you had it.
Yeah. When this process first started was a couple of years ago, I, on some of my liaison responsibilities, hang out with a couple of commissioners from Benton County. And when when we kind of talk among ourselves about what's going on in our counties, I always bring up our jail. And, they started getting very interested in working with us because of our facility.
Right.
Because we have one of the finest clinics in the state of Oregon that any county jail has. We are adequately staffed. We have a new facility. We are really getting because you and the sheriff represent us so well. And from the beginning, they were interested in us because of our jail, because of the standards that they felt our jail met. And I think that's so incredible. I mean, that is just so incredible that not only were these people looking for beds for their folks, but they wanted good beds. They wanted a place that was responsible and could take care of those with mental problems and with nearby, even for a rural hospital, with nearby health care available. So yes, a profit center because we have one of the best jails in the state. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We appreciate your support over the years, because we do provide considerably more services in our little facility than most jails are able to across the state, so.
Absolutely. So
Mr.
people
Banks?
are coming here because of the quality.
It's almost like tourism. Sorry, couldn't help myself.
Mr. Banks?
Shut up, folks. Yep, that's right. I just want to props to you and the sheriff and your staff for your willingness to diversify, to be creative, and to constantly seek ideas that will help support your future and the future of your staff, but the future of our county. And it's just, I don't think, we are extremely lucky to have leaders as yourself and the sheriff leading this charge of diversification, because it's not for the faint of heart, and this is very creative, and I appreciate it.
Yep, I agree. Great leadership.
Great leadership.
We have a motion in front of us. Are we ready for that?
I move to approve contract C-9014 with Benton County for a 2-year jail bed lease in the amount not to exceed $858,480. That is $429,240 per year. Authorize the county manager to execute and sign any amendments.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the contract C-9014 with Benton County for a 2-year jail bed lease in an amount not to exceed $858,480, which equates to a $429,240 per year fee. Authorize the county manager to execute and sign any amendments. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Before you call the question.
Okay. Okay. Discussion?
Yes. I contacted the county manager because, about the issue that it appeared to me that this motion was giving our county manager blanket ability to change anything in the contract. And I think that for a contract this big, that's a little bit too far. Would you, county manager, respond to how you responded?
Sure. Jaquila, Commissioner Webb, members of the board. When it comes to amendments to the contracts, we still follow the procurement rules and all of the authorities. But I would also say that if there was going to be any kind of a substantive change in the board, the amendment process is really, with my signature, is really a convenience just to kind of move forward the routine adjustments that inevitably happen with extensions and other, routine contract amendments. So my commitment always to the board is to bring anything that is, more substantive back to your board so you can weigh in and make the decision. So.
Thank you. I appreciated that response very, very much. Because this is a new deal for us. You know, this is a whole new deal. So I think that any changes and tweaks, other than the minor ones, you know, maybe especially if it's process type things. So, thank you.
Okay, are we ready for the question?
Yes.
All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much, Paul. Appreciate it. Great work.
Great.
Next is a public hearing on vacation of portion of F Street on page 44. And we have our surveyor, Vance Swenson. Thank you so much, Vance, for being here.
Thank you, Chair Quila, members of the board. It's really great to see all of you here. Some who probably had a little harder time than others to get here. My name's Vance Swenson, the county surveyor. I'm going to help you all conduct a public hearing to approve of road vacation and authorize the chair to sign the resolution order. This is the last step of a vacation process that started back on February 26th.
Hey, Vance, before you get started, I do have a script here, so I gotta follow my,
Oh, sure.
my
Yes,
script.
sorry.
This is the continuation of a public hearing on ordinance 25-02, clear and objective standards for housing.
No, it's the item before that.
No.
Is it not in the script?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, that's I apologize, Vance. I was reading the wrong one, so continue on.
Okay. All right, so, on February 26th, the board accepted a petition to vacate a small portion of unbuilt road, in the John Day area. If you look at, I believe it's page 54 and 55, you can kind of see a map of it. This is going to be real typical to the last few we've done. So on April 9th, the county engineer presented the roadmaster's report on the consent calendar. We provided that we notified the budding property owners and advertised in the paper required by law. So the portion of the street is just a paper platted street. It hasn't been built. The only real unique thing about this one is it provides access to the John Day River or a branch of the river. And so there's a planning goal 16 and 17 that says if you eliminate public access to a river, you have to provide the same width of access somewhere else. So fortunately, the owners, the way they own the land, they could dedicate some just to the south that actually made the vacation portion better usable for, I believe, house building. And then the southerly portion actually serves an access to the river better, closer. So with that, this public hearing is the final step in the process. And the fiscal impact is none. The petitioners have paid the fee. I guess I forgot to mention that there are a couple of deeds of dedication that have been signed by the two petitioners for the new road dedication. Teresa has those. I believe the chair.
And they're in the
can sign.
packet.
There's an acceptance line to sign. Everything else is ready to go. With
Great.
that, are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Vance. After I tried to throw you off your game, you did
No.
a fantastic job presenting. Any questions for our county surveyor?
Great report. Great, good work.
Okay. Are we ready for a motion?
To approve the resolution in order vacating a portion of F Street and authorize the board chair to sign the resolution in order.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the resolution in order vacating a portion of F Street and authorizing the board chair to sign the resolution in order. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
So this is the second hearing.
Yep, this is it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great evening.
Thank you, Vance. And now we go to ordinance 25-02, clear and objective standards for housing on page 59. Gail Henriksen, our Community Development Director. This is the continuation of a public hearing on ordinance 25-02, clear and objective standards for housing. County Council, can we have the second reading by title only?
Yes, this is ordinance number 25-02 in the matter of an ordinance amending Articles 1 through 6 of the Clatsop County Land and Water Development and Use Code to incorporate clear and objective standards for housing.
Thank you, County Council. Gail, do we have any additional information?
I do not.
All right, so no additional information from staff. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, there are not.
All right, is there anyone signed up to speak in person this evening?
No, there are not.
All right. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Do we have any discussion? Are we ready for a motion?
Just a little.
Okay, Commissioner Thompson?
Just a little. I mean, clear and objective standards in land use planning. What a wonderful thing.
There. All right, are you ready for a motion then?
I move to adopt ordinance 2502 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt ordinance 25-02 as presented. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank
you
you.
very much, Gail. All right, that is all we have. Anybody have anything for the good of the order?
Excellent work.
Okay, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Woo! I have a question.